All right, friends, this is week 15. It is our last class video, and we are going to wrap things up this week. Normally, a last week would not have much going on in it, but because we've chopped away at the rest of the semester, we still have some things to address. I'm not going to overwhelm you, I promise, but we are going to look at the following. I'm going to give you a little bit of overarching feedback on stage 3. You have individual feedback, but I'm going to give you some specifics that might apply to some of you. I said we're going to talk more about this in class. So that's it. Then we're going to complete your grading exploration. You've already read your articles and shared information with your classmates who read different articles. You're going to use that information along with a video of your choice to come up with, to have sound grading practices in mind, and you're going to evaluate a set of grading policies and do a Padlet post on that. Then we're going to look at an alternative approach, and then we'll go over some final due dates. Okay, so within this video, you'll need to make some time to do some watching of other videos and some posting. I'll cue you in on when to do that as we go. Okay, so stage 3 feedback, some patterns that I found, some things that I started typing and then stopped because I concluded they were full group patterns. First of all, look at the examples in the week 10 module. I was going to say that quite a bit, and I forgot my end quote on that. A couple of times I found that you needed to describe the organizer, the activity sheet in detail, or attach it to the end of stage 3. You don't have to do both. But if you're doing a My Math Book textbook page, and you don't tell me what the different categories are, like somebody else reading that would be like, I have no idea what that means. So either describe what the categories are or attach it at the end of your organizer, of your unit plan. And there are some times where you might do a headline news summary and want to change something about it. A couple of you described things that you changed, and that's great. Again, if you've described the template and what students are putting on it, what they're required to share in detail, then you don't need to include the template, but you got to do one or the other. I asked a lot, what will you do to respond to the results? You say you'll address it later in the unit, but you never circle back. So either if you say, I'll respond to it later in the unit, you either have to include that or you'll have to think about what you're going to do in the next class period. And I actually think doing a next class period thing is more efficient. So if you just said, this will let me know who gets it and who does not, but you didn't follow through at all, then you need to add some response ideas, how you will respond. If you did say you would respond, but just said you would teach different later on in the unit, you need to get more specific about that. And you also need to think about what if students are in different places and you can't just do a full group review, because a lot of you relied on a full group review as your way of addressing using the formative assessment results. So here are some ideas for you. Ideas for using, and I would say an easy way to do is to plan to use the next day's warm-up time to address formative assessment results. Here are some options. Begin class by using differentiated review stations. Like, I will use this, and based on the patterns I see in their responses, I'll have review stations for them to complete the next day during warm-up. Or if I see that some students are still struggling, I will pull a small group for reteaching during the warm-up. Or I will look for common mistakes revealed by the assessment, and I'll focus the warm-up on those. And that's like my favorite no, basically. That's what she's doing, but she did an entry card. Instead, use your exit cards. Look at my exit cards. I'll find some common errors, and I'll do my favorite no during the warm-up. So those are 3 options that I think you can, specific options that you could use if you don't know how you're going to respond to the results. Rather than say later on in the unit, either say specifically when in the unit and how, or use one of these tried and true techniques for using assessment results. The warm-up is your friend. Does that make sense? If you have questions about it, you can ask me when I see you. All right, so let's get into the grading situation. Grades. Dun dun dun. You will find on the in Canvas a copy of grading policies by Mr. Dubois. You're going to look at the following portions of his policies that impact participation and grading. You'll see 1 and 2 participation is mentioned. You'll see that 3, 4, and 7 and 8 focus very clearly on grading or participation or homework. And so those sections you're going to look at them. So basically, not 5 and 6, and 1 and 2 are just brief. And then you're going to examine your notes and your classmates' notes to see what the literature has to say about these issues. Then you're going to watch at least of one of the Rick Wormley videos options. They're posted in Canvas to gather more information. There's one on zeros, there's one on homework, and there's one on late work. So those 3 things are there. You can just pick one of those 3, or if you're really curious, you can watch them all. They're about 5 to 7 minutes, I think. Then you're going to evaluate the soundness of each of Mr. Dubois' grading and homework policies by posting on on Padlet. You can look in these sections. So 1 or 2 points of praise, and then at least 5 areas for growth, things that he should change. You will post that here. This Padlet, I'll put it in, since it's hard to get to here, I'll post the link in Canvas as well. What you'll see if you go there is this. You'll just click, you'll put your name, and then you'll say praise 1, blah, praise 2, blah, change areas for growth, but it might just do change 1, and you'll do up to 5 changes. Change 2, change. Aren't you glad I'm modeling for you? That was my dog. He's having a dream. This is so sad. Theo, it's okay. Oh, sorry. Seriously, Theo. Oh, gosh. I'm going to keep talking so you can't hear his little fluttering bad dreams. Just a second. I have to go wake him up. Poor guy. It's okay. It's okay, pumpkin. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. Back to our regularly scheduled program, already in progress. So that is what you're going to do. You're going to look at Mr. Dubois' grading policies, these in particular. Look at your notes. Look at your classmates' notes. Watch at least one of these Rick Wormley videos, and then give us at least 1 to 2 points of praise and at least 5 areas of growth or things that he should change about his grading policies. All right. I believe in you. You can do it. So we're going to pretend like you're paused and you're working on it. Pause. Welcome back from posting on Padlet. I'm so grateful that you did that, and I cannot wait to read what you've said. What I hope you realize and that filtered into your Padlet posts is these are kind of the big takeaways. Grades should reflect performance, progress, and process. But performance should be weighted most heavily. A grade should most reflect what students are able to know, understand, and be able to do, what they show you. Now, if we're going to include some progress information, we really need to focus on the more recent data. So if students weren't getting something at the beginning, but they end up getting at the end, then we are going to focus on that end. The more recent evidence is the best evidence. And that's true in every field. So why not in teaching? Participation or process might be better phrased as professionalism or habits of mind. I have way overweighted your professionalism or your process grade for this semester. But this semester was different. This semester turned crazy. So you have a lot more points for participation than I would usually do. But the fact that you could stay professional and continue to complete work when the sky is falling, I feel like needs to be rewarded. So that is why I am doing that. Zeros. They skew data. Rick Wormelli will talk. If you didn't read that one about zeros, you should definitely read that one or watch that video. Zeros, if you give a zero, you both skew the data because like every grade is worth 10 points and then an F is worth 60. Like that doesn't make any sense. We should be on like a 50-point grade system or a 5-point grade system. They also eliminate hope. Kids see a zero, see that their grade is shot and give up. So we should not be giving zeros. We should be giving 50s or 60s. We can still give an F without giving a zero. And it will still hurt their grade without giving them any way to come back from it. So they're not going to get an A. It's just going to give them a chance to pass or to get a B. Homework should be giving sparingly, if at all. Albemarle County does not allow it anymore. And teachers have really struggled with that because some kids were very grade motivated. Now, other kids who were never grade motivated, it's been a very good thing for them. Homework should be weighted lightly, if at all. Again, Albemarle doesn't allow it. But if you're allowed to give homework, it should be very brief and it should be geared toward practice. Homework, in many cases, is an example of socioeconomic bias. We are saying to a high school or a middle school kid who maybe has to work or babysit after school, that they will be penalized for having additional responsibilities to school when other kids get to come home after practice and have a little nice space to do their homework and they're not bothered and they have snacks. It really is, that's the issue with homework and with how it can really just kind of divide rewarding kids who have a safe and productive environment to work and punishing kids who don't happen to have that. Classwork is what Albemarle County is using more. They're giving some time at the end for kids to practice. And that's made a lot of difference. All in all, the more we concentrate on feedback and growth, the more equitable our grading becomes. So, because, and hopefully you've experienced that in this class, that I don't want to penalize you. I want to give you feedback so that you will do it. You will be able to do it correctly. I want you all to do well. And so that's why we've had multiple opportunities for feedback because I want you to grow. So I want to show you another way. What does this look like in a classroom that's not as project-based, perhaps, as we were in ours? I'm going to watch this teacher in action. She's actually the teacher that did my favorite no. And this is I think she's teaching 7th grade now in this video. What do you see enacted by this teacher that reminds you of what we read or talked about for today? What small tweaks might make it even better, and how might you adapt it for your classroom? All right, so here we go.
I'm Leah Alcala. I teach 7th and 8th grade math. Today you're going to see the way that I have started grading tests. Okay, you guys, right now what we're going to do is get our tests back from Friday. I've no longer put grades on tests, and my feedback is all in the form of highlighted mistakes. When is the retake for this test? Friday after school. How do you find out your grade? You go on Power School tomorrow. It will be posted tomorrow.
She can do the retake after school because they have, if you read all the comments in this, you learn a lot. They have an activity bus that will take kids home. So they have this time after school that could be for practice or for, like reteaching or whatever. So that's what she's using to give the retake of the test. You wouldn't have to do that. You could do it in class time. You could do it at lunch. You could do it whenever you wanted to.
Here we go. For me, I really want every interaction I have with a kid to be a learning moment. What I was finding when I was handing back tests, the old way where I put a grade on it, is kids would look at their grade, decide whether they were good at math or not, and put the test away and never look at it again. I want you to look at this next one. By not putting a grade on the test, I feel like what I'm allowing them to do is kind of wrestle with the math that they produced for me first and think of the grade second. When I first did this, the number one question I would get every time I passed back a test is, what's my grade on this? How many points is this problem worth? And I had to do a lot of, remember, your grade in 7th grade isn't nearly as important as how much math you learn. So that took a lot of reframing for them. And at this point, very few kids will ask me their grade. And most of the questions that I get are about the math. I want to show you, before we get your test back, some of my favorite mistakes that came up a couple times. They could be from any of my classes. -4 times 2x minus 3 equals 28. I highlighted that 2x equals 7. Tell your group what is wrong with this. I am highlighting where their mistake is, but I'm not mentioning specifically what that mistake is.
If 2x equals 7, then wouldn't it be 7 minus 3, which is 4? But then -4 times 4 is -16.
Not
28.
Beautiful. So it becomes part of the classwork of getting a test back to figure out why they made a mistake in this particular step. So I see that now when I give tests back, they're continuing to learn. Why did I highlight that x? Pema?
Because if x is 3 and then the fraction is equal 1.
So what should they have written instead? To talk to your group.
No, it'd have to be 9/3.
They forgot what they were covering up.
They should have written x over 3 equals 3.
Right. So I'm going to hand out your tests. Can you guys look at your mistakes and see if you understand them? If you don't understand them, can you talk to your neighbor or me?
How'd I get -4? How'd I get that?
What'd you put? What was
I'm
x?
thinking.
When you add -5, does it go this way or this way?
Oh, -3 times 5 equals -15.
So you really can't look at the number of highlights and determine your grade. It is a much more involved and nuanced process of understanding what types of mistakes this kid is making and how important are those mistakes in terms of learning math. What happened here?
I just had to do x equals negative.
Yeah, you just didn't finish. I almost put that one up. I really like that one. I grade the tests in 2 go-rounds. I first read from top to bottom the whole test, and I'm looking for the moment when the mistake gets made. So it's very important to me that I highlight only the mistake, and then I explain to them that the answer they got was actually the wrong answer, but it wasn't at that point in the problem that they messed up. So I call it flow-through credit. So these are 2 good examples of flow-through credit. Here's one where they made a mistake early on in the problem, but then didn't make any other mistakes. So their mistake flowed through the problem perfectly. They only lost points for this. In this problem, they made a mistake. And then, even if I assumed this whole line to be correct, they got this wrong based on this. So they would lose points for both lines of this problem. The other advantage is I can highlight things that I wouldn't even take points off for. So for instance, on today's test, I highlighted if they didn't write that it was the number of treats that Lucia baked, but I actually didn't take off any points for that because they're going to be fine going forward. But I want to bring their attention to that.
Yes. Yeah, I did the Ruby's treats and not the number of them.
Once I've done all of that, I look at all the tests a second time. And now I'm looking at the test as a whole, and I'm saying, what kind of mistakes is this child making? Are there common mistakes that are happening over and over again, or are there lots of different types of mistakes? What happened here?
I thought it was adding instead of subtracting.
Okay, so similar mistakes there. That's really good. If they have something in their mind that works and they're applying that mistake over and over again, I'm not going to take off a point from every problem for that. That's an easy mistake for me to fix because we just have to have that one conversation versus if they're just doing random things all over the place. Both of those tests might have a lot of highlights on them, but one would definitely have a much higher grade than the other. Why is that wrong?
Because negative 15x plus 2x is negative 13x.
Beautiful. Can you fix it from there? One piece of advice is that it doesn't take longer to grade tests this way. I think that was a big fear. It is a similar amount of time and it's far more enjoyable. I felt highlight happy. My hope is that through this strategy, they see that studying their mistakes and learning from their mistakes is really what learning is. What happened here?
It was supposed to be plus -5.
Plus -5. Everything else was perfect, including your negative sign. Why is this wrong? I allow them to retake the test whenever they want, and I'll give them a new version of the test. Often kids need to sit with me a little bit more before they're ready to retake. So they'll come see me at lunch or during advisory and we'll go over it.
I didn't really understand it.
Oh, do you know what to do now?
Yeah, the distributive property.
Yeah, why don't you do that right now? This one surprised me.
The wrong way.
So to normalize the process of making mistakes is very much my goal for these kids. It allows them to take more risks.
All right. Hope that helped reimagine what it might look like to give a test back without a grade on it, but with feedback. And for her, the feedback was simply highlighting where the mistake happened. There are different ways that you could do that in different content areas, and I'd invite you to think about how that might apply to your content area and how you think about it. We'll talk a little bit about this when we meet in Zoom, what you thought about it, what questions you have. But as you read, feedback is more important than grades, and that's one way that she tried to wean her kids off of grades. Even though they eventually ended up with one, the focus was on learning, the normalizing of mistakes. And even when that kid pulled his peers' test over and was looking at the two of them combined, he was like, where did I get -4? How did I get -4? He was still thinking about his own work in terms of what had his process been and where did he go wrong. So I just really like that. Okay. So we just need to finish up with some terminology that we may not have talked about like explicitly, but we've been dealing with all semester, and that's validity and reliability. If we're talking about validity, we're talking about the accuracy of measure. Or does the task, like your performance task or your test, measure what you claim it measures? Reliability is how consistent it is. In other words, would different assessors using the same rubric on your performance task or the same scoring guide for your essay in your essay test arrive at the same or a similar score? So we want our performance tasks and our tests, in this case, we're going to focus on performance tasks, to be both valid and really assess the UKDs and reliable. Have our rubric be so clear that different assessors would arrive at the same conclusion. And we've taken steps to make sure that we've done this already, even though we haven't used the terminology. We did a validity check with your UKDs. And I think we could do this in the GRASP itself. I asked you to do it in the rubric, but I'd like you to try it in the GRASP itself. I want you to take look at your stage 1 and your GRASP rubric. You already did that. Does it really assess the UKDs it says it does and code them? I'd like you to do it in your GRASP as well. And maybe we should have started there. I'm going to look for it in your rubric for sure. But I think it might help you if you looked at it, like the direction in the GRASP that pointed them to do D skill 3, the direction in the task that asked them to wrestle with U2. And write that right in there. Again, I'm not going to grade for that, but that can help you do a little validity check. Does my GRASP really measure what I say it does? And then the reliability comes in just in terms of your rubric is so clear with descriptors and quality descriptors and indicators that two different people could use the rubric and still get the same score. That's what I was shooting for in terms of descriptiveness of your columns of your rubric. Some validity issues is when we ask for page numbers, or the number of sentences. Requiring a certain number of pages or sentences isn't the best way to communicate your expectations. They could write a whole paragraph or 2 paragraphs and not address any of your UKDs. On the other hand, a good writer could address all of your UKDs in detail within 1 paragraph. They might just be a really crafty writer. So it's much better to hold students accountable for the content and the detail or the quality of that content in your scoring guide, rather than the number of pages or the number of paragraphs or the number of sentences. That's one thing that I saw coming out of some of your rubrics and your test questions. So to increase both validity and reliability in a performance task, make sure your UKDs are clearly aligned to the guidelines and rubric descriptions. So that would be like the number, like the directions in your task and the rubric, the bullet points in your rubric. Spell out your content expectations clearly and specifically instead of page numbers. Make sure your expectations are digestible for students. For instance, you need to add a checklist to your PBA or your PBL. Make sure your expectations align with your rubric, and make sure your rubric is specific enough that different raters would use it and get a similar score. So these are, now I'm giving you the terminology for what we've really been wrestling with the entire semester in terms of crafting powerful tests and tasks. So what is due? On Canvas, Friday at 5, your formative assessment analysis. Please remember to look at the exemplars on Canvas. Sometimes people don't want to look at the exemplars. They think, oh, it's gonna be like cheating, or it's gonna freak me out. No, they are there for a purpose. They are models which you are to emulate. They give you a better picture of how to. You might look at a direction and go, I don't know how to do that. Then go look at the exemplar and see how they did it. And you'll even see, if you look at both of them, they took different approaches to meet the criteria. So that is due Friday at 5. And then Wednesday at noon, your final alignment guide. You're going to follow make sure you have everything in all the columns. You'll only have 3 in your test column because you only asked 3 test questions, and that's okay. UBD stages 1 through 3. So you'll have your detailed versions of your GRASP or your PBL and your rubric with your UKDs coded in both. I know I'm only requiring in the rubric, but I'm encouraging it in the PBA and PBL. You can include your task description, your student-friendly description within the template, or do a skeleton in the template and attach a separate student version. You guys have already done, different folks have done different things. And then all supplementary formative assessment materials for stage 3 should be attached as well. So if you describe the web windup, like include the template for that. If you don't want to describe it in detail in the section of the stage 3 that describes it. If you could make it all one, if you could make it all one attachment, that would be great. If you can't, the fewer attachments, the better. So maybe you've got, stages 1 through 3 in one document. And then maybe you've got your student-friendly example in another one, and then all of your formative assessment templates in another one. One is the best, fewer is better. That's kind of the rule. I'm going to have office hours on Monday, 5/4 from 10 to 12, where you can drop in on Zoom. I'll send out that link to that announcement. But if you're not limited to that, just know that that's when they will be. So I'm going to leave you with this quote by George Bernard Shaw. The only man I know who behaves sensibly is my tailor. He takes my measurements anew each time he sees me. The rest go on with their old measurements and expect me to fit them. And as I looked at your stage 3s, I was really struck by the fact that you were taking measurements throughout the unit and shaping your instruction to match those instead of just teaching as if you had no idea. Like, kids are going to grow within your unit. So it's really important that you keep checking in to see what they need. Thank you guys for your hard work with that. First of all, I will miss you. I'm going to see you on Zoom in a minute. Soon. I'll see you on Zoom, but know that I will miss you. And I'm thankful for what you guys have done throughout this semester, especially when it got crazy. I'm really impressed with you. And then also, awkwardness. Could you please complete your course evaluations? I know they were sent to you, and I know you're like, one more email, one more thing online. But I would really appreciate the feedback, and I need to use that feedback when I write my annual performance review each year about what I did well and what I need to fix. So I would appreciate that. My department chair sees them. I think the dean will want to see them this year. So anyway, thank you. I will miss you, but I will see you soon. I'll see you Wednesday at 10.